With Google moving so fast, how do we match pace if we're working at the enterprise SEO level? We're unpacking the problems and the future of enterprise SEO with Mark Traphagen today on The Edge.
Go! Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. Powered by your digital marketing pioneers, Site Strategics. This week's featured guest is Mark Traphagen, VP of Product Marketing and Training at SEO Clarity. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
This is Edge of the Web. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks of Site Strategics. Every week we bring you amazing guests to chat with about digital marketing news and trends in our space. We unpack a key marketing topic for our digital marketing audience. Whether you're part of an agency or a freelancer or part of a firm, this show is for you. Be sure to check out all our recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. Edge of the Web is actually brought to you by Site Strategics, the title sponsor of our show. Site Strategics are the pioneers in agile digital marketing. Our core specialties are SEO, SEM, social media conversion rate optimization, as well as the omni-channel media marketing. Agile marketing, results-based marketing that actually works. If you're interested in what we can do for you, give us a call at 877-SEO for Web or 877-736-4932. Just wanted to let you know who will be coming up on the show here, or actually who has just been on the show recently. Andrew Optimize Z, Pedro Diaz, as well as Carolyn Line, and give those shows a look at and a listen to because we had a great time with them. And if you're interested in being part of The Edge, just drop us a line at info@edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. Set your reminders on YouTube to get notified when we post the videos as well. Also, make sure to check our weekly news podcast covering the most recent digital marketing news and Google updates. We're dropping every Tuesday to help you navigate your digital marketing week. Continue having a guest host there on the news, Morty Oberstein, SEO liaison of Wix. So with all that aside, let's meet this week's industry expert. Mark Traphagen is the VP of Product Marketing and Training for SEO Clarity, a leading enterprise SaaS SEO platform. Mark's a sought-after speaker and writer on the topics of SEO, social media, and content marketing. He's also been named one of the most influential content and social media authors in numerous industry listings. So SEO Clarity, he actually oversees both the positioning and market awareness of SEO Clarity and all of its products and services, as well as also their internal and client-facing training. So he's a busy man. He's also been instrumental in the guidance of SEO insights with a number of different firms such as Proficient Digital, Aim Clear, Stone Temple Consulting, and Verante. So we are blessed to be able to have a welterweight champion here in SEO. Mark Traphagen, thanks for joining us today, sir.
Well, my doctor says I'm more of an overweight champion, but thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Great to be here.
Mark, it's great to meet you, and accept my apologies that we haven't had you on the show prior to this because that's a failure on our part because you've been doing this a heck of a long time, and you've also been amongst the greats, including Eric Enga over at Stone Temple Consulting. So that said, can you give us your history in your own words?
Right. Professional history. I'm a conglomeration of, I think, the things that I've done, like we all are, of course, but I was a teacher for many years. I was a salesman for about 10 years. So that all kind of came together until in the late 90s, early 2000s. I went off to grad school, and in grad school got a job in the campus bookstore, which was getting killed by Amazon. Surprise, surprise. Students were finding out they could buy their books cheaper online. So one day my boss gave me a challenge and sat me down in front of a very nice computer and said, see if you can take us online. And because he literally said this, he said, because you know about that internet thing, right? Which was completely based on the fact that I was an avid blogger at the time. So I knew about that internet thing.
Absolutely. And all the internets and the tubes and
the internets, the tubes. Yep. But somehow we did it over a 2-year period. We built an e-commerce store for the bookstore. Blogging this is before social networking, so blogging was the huge thing then. I did outreach to bloggers that were selling books in our niche because we knew we had a market out there way beyond our students, and we found it. And I found my new love. And along the way, I invented SEO. So you're welcome, all of you.
Thank you very much, sir. I was wondering who actually did that.
When I say invented, it means I stumbled upon it. Literally because there's getting all these highly ranked bloggers to link to our store. And one day I just did a random search for one of our books and noticed that we were actually outranking Amazon for that book. And I said, like, how did that happen? And I began to investigate and, found out about SEO, and it became my love in my life. So when I was done with school, we moved here to North Carolina and talked my way into a job with an agency, got to sit at the feet of people like Russ Jones, was most recently of Moz.
Sure.
And just learned a ton, absorbed everything I could, and started moving my mouth like I am now. And here I am in front of a microphone, moving my mouth again.
Fantastic. I think it all kind of coalesces here. And it's great that you have a teacher's background as well, because this stuff needs to be broken apart and understood on key principles. But on top of that, there's constantly a brand new group of fledgling SEOs that are just getting into the market. And this is not the SEO of 20 years ago. I caught your podcast on Search Engine Journal show. Fantastic interview. And yeah, absolutely. And that you kind of going over some of the yesteryear points. This is not that game. And perhaps the digital natives now are a good deal more attuned to it. But boy, this was a long crawl to get to the point where we're now in the semantic SEO and these type of relationships, right?
And part of the fun of that is now, for the last almost year and a half now, being at SEO Clarity, which is, I've, changed the desk from being a consultant with agencies for most of my digital marketing career to starting out as a practitioner, then consult with agencies, and then now moving in-house with an SEO software provider. Getting to see it almost from the other side of the curtain because of the massive amounts of data that we look at, that we deal with, and our daily investments in machine learning, artificial intelligence, kind of back engineer what's happening in the search results. We get to kind of a much up closer look at how massive those shifts are and how much they affect the landscape, and how much some of the things that worked in the past or we could simply do in the past aren't as relevant anymore.
One of the key things that I wanted to bring to our users' attention is the changing environment of the enterprise SEO space. So you have a great deal of experience at enterprise SEO, and where there are teams working on large scale websites, millions and millions of pages. So whatever you're talking about, the data that you see behind the scenes of ranking data and shifting environments, an enterprise SEO campaign with teams, it's a difficult scenario because it's almost like moving a barge, right? So one of the core problems is trying to move fast when you're analyzing things. So how do you actually give guidance to enterprise SEOs to be able to move from just analysis to actually being more agile on the enterprise SEO horizon?
Well, you've so well described the exact pain point that we hear, not only from our clients, but my latest Search Engine Journal column was about this very issue, about the issue of scalability in, in enterprise SEO. Because I went out on my social media following on Twitter, LinkedIn, and one day I just asked, like, if you're an enterprise SEO, what is your biggest challenge? And we ended up titling the article not challenges, but titling it scalability in SEO enterprise SEO, because that really was the issue. That was the thing that was repeated. That word came up again and again. Whether you're talking about being able to scale yourself as the main SEO for a large organization, a large site, being able to scale the mountains of politics that can be involved in that, and having to work with other departments, having to work with people who don't understand SEO and its value, but also just the data and the technology, the huge mountain of data that you're dealing with. So at SEO Clarity, our concentration as an SEO platform in the last number of years has moved away from just trying to provide the biggest and best data set, and I think we do that. But all the tools claim to do that to one extent or another.
Sure.
To move beyond that, to our focus is really on helping enterprise level SEOs move from data to insight to action. And the issue that we saw, the biggest scalability issue, is the time that takes. So, the data can come in these days almost instantaneously. A lot of our data is literally real time and can be accessed real time, or certainly within an hour or a day, depending on which data it is. So that comes in very fast. Then there's the time spent extracting the insights of which of that data is important, what does it mean, what is it telling me, and then setting up and actually doing the action that can take advantage of that or fix it if it's a problem.
Right.
And that gap is huge at the enterprise level. So everything that we're doing, everything that we're building is focused on reducing that gap, at taking that out. So automating more and more the insights that can be gained from the data and doing that sifting work for you 24/7. So when you come into work in the morning as an SEO, you're looking at something that tells you these are the issues that are happening right now. This is why they matter. This is the ones that matter most first. And here's what I need to do about them so I can get them assigned to action. So that's where our concentration is. And I think that's where, there's a lot of other things that we can't help with, maybe some of the politics and things like that, but that's an area where I think good tools can really help. And automation and machine learning insights are becoming something that's gone from being a luxury or a nice to have or something that's kind of fun toy to being an absolute necessity if you're talking about any size website.
Absolutely. And we'll get to kind of the growth past the rank report concept here in a minute, but I wanted to stay inside of the analysis and the training of machine learning that we have in front of us. I mean, we have an incredible new mountain to be able to climb, which is going to give us a heck of a lot better targeting formula than ever before, but you still have to set the priorities. You still have to set the business goals. You just can't set machine learning to go without actually teaching it where or what's important to you from a business role standpoint and business goal standpoint, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like one of our biggest assets is our clients, our huge base of clients from some of the largest brands in the world, largest sites that people would know right away if I were able to mention them here.
Sure.
That these are people who face these problems every day. And so we practice listening to them very, very carefully. We've always said at SEO Clarity that, everything that we've built because two or more of our clients have asked for it. And that's where the insights come from. That's where we hear the pain points and how can we apply things like machine learning to solve that problem at the kind of scale that it needs to be solved. One of the so that's really setting up the what you were just talking about is what are the priorities? Because for, like you said, for any machine learning venture, you have to start with that. You have to tell it what's the outcomes that we want, what's the problem we're trying to solve, what are the parameters, right. And you have to start teaching it and training it that way. Then the other advantage of this approach is that machine learning is just a fantastic experimental lab. So before we release anything, even beta to clients, there's going to be, depending on what it is, months of testing and learning and adapting, allowing that algorithm to work and looking at what it's putting out. And then testing, how does that affect, are those insights really true? Do they actually have a positive effect if you apply them? So it's that kind of advantage that you're working from. But from the starting point, as you mentioned, it's so important to be constantly not only talking with our clients, but it's why part of my job is actually spending a significant amount of time on social media and in forums with other professional SEOs, just to listen, just to hear what they're expressing, what they think is important, what they think works, what they think doesn't work, what they're seeing, where their pain points are.
Could you comment on, to that point, as almost like a sidebar, can you comment on what you see from maybe SEOs collectively, maybe the gap that they have in understanding the true business goals? Because SEOs, by and large, are academic. We're either coders or we're analytically minded, but a lot of times that they don't bridge the chasm to what the executive or the C-suite's actually looking to get out of them. And there's a lot of misunderstanding between those two camps. Can you give me any type of commentary on what you see regularly of how much SEOs kind of get the goals of business.
Well, certainly one of the things that I learned from that survey that I did for Search Engine Journal, and I got just hundreds of more responses than I ever expected to get from it. I think I just kind of tapped into a nerve, and there were so many enterprise level SEOs that were eager to express, what they were seeing and feeling. But a large part of that, as I'd mentioned earlier, was about the need to be more integrated through their organization and have their organization understand who they are. And so what I've been seeing is that I think the most successful SEOs at the enterprise level are not only those that have tremendous technical acumen and great work habits and productivity skills and all those things which are absolutely baseline necessary, but more and more the ones who realize that they've got to be integrated in their organization. They've got to be part of the marketing team, part of the technology team. They've got to build those relationships. They have to get really good at communicating value to the C-suite or whoever is over them, that these things are just an essential part of their job, maybe in many cases as much as the technical aspects of what they do. So I think my main answer to that was just the encouraging thing is I think there's a lot more awareness of that. How to make that happen? That's one thing I'll cheerfully express.
Pass on to somebody else.
Above my pay grade. Like, I don't do counseling.
I actually have interviewed a number of individuals that actually do that type of counseling and try to sow not a concession, but find that common ground vernacular between C-suite and SEOs and the dev team and what have you. So, I mean, that's not for the faint of heart. That particular specialty is unique. But getting back to the SEOs, there is a constant habit that we're trying to break. We're trying to at least educate SEOs on this program. Stop staying in your spreadsheets. It's not about rank analysis. You need to be doing things, not just analyzing things. So Google's moving at the speed of light, it seems sometimes, with the changes that are happening right in front of us, right? And you're privy to this data in almost real time to be able to see the shifts of SERP, see the environment that's changing. What's your take on this? Do we have to move as fast as Google is?
Yes and no. I'm going to give that. The very typical, the two most typical answers of an SEO, right? Are it depends and yes and no.
That was one. I was okay. We had 13 minutes before it depends came through.
Because now you ask a question that actually matters about something that's identifiable with that. So I'm going to waffle entirely. Like any good SEO.
There you go.
I think it truly is yes and no, because there are ways, yes, in which you need to be adjusting, I think, aware of the ways that Google is moving. We certainly are, because we certainly track that on an hourly basis. We're constantly sampling hundreds of millions of SERPs at every hour, and just seeing things like how the search features change and what's displayed in relation to a certain query, and how Google's doing experiments and moving things around, things like that. We see those changes. But for the average SEO, getting bogged down in that, I think this is where the no part of it comes, can be a distraction. Probably the classic example of that is algorithm changes. Not that they're unimportant, and if an algorithm change comes out and your site is largely impacted, then it becomes an immediate concern.
Sure.
But I'm certainly not original in saying, like, I think most professional SEOs realize that there's more and more that there's little value in chasing the algorithm, because it's changing constantly, and it's very difficult to tell at any particular moment exactly what the changes are and what it's doing. So the no part of that is, I think there's more value in trying to discern the bigger moves over time and how much they matter. So maybe just a great little case study of that right now is how we see the thing with page experience update, or most people concentrate on the speed part of the core web vitals, but it's a little more than that.
Right.
But since that being announced a little over a year ago, first announced, at first it was like a big, when Google announces something, that always seems big, of course, because they bother to announce it. And most of their changes they don't announce. And so there was a lot of attention and a lot of speculation, and people invested a lot of time and money in it. So yeah, Core Web Vitals are coming out soon. Page experience update, this summer, rolling out gradually over the summer. But now as we get closer and closer to it, we're hearing from the Google spokespeople something that I suspected and was informing my clients of last year. And that is, this is not unimportant, but it's not going to be huge. It's not going to be, this is not something that Google is going to factor in as a, as a game changer, or it's going to, bring sites down or move sites way up. And in fact, they're using a term that I was using last year. Now people like John Mueller and Gary Ish are saying, like, it's kind of a tiebreaker. All of the things being equal, yeah, we're going to give a little nudge to the site that has the better experience, better user experience, that loads faster, that is less cluttered, et cetera, et cetera. So again, not important. The bigger lesson out of that on our topic here of, how much attention do we pay to all the changes of Google, and do we have to move as fast as Google, is, the great advice from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, about everything. Don't panic. Try to get the bigger perspective. I think the positive side of Core Web Vitals is probably what Google wanted to have happen, which is that we all pay a little bit more attention to it now. And it's a good thing for our users. It's not a bad thing to fix that. But if you're making that your number one priority for 2021, I think you're way out of whack.
If you're paying attention to Core Web Vitals, and if you don't have your content experience dialed in of what's useful to the user, you are literally chasing fireflies here, and you've got half your house is on fire, right?
Yeah.
That's a very weird analogy, but it works. Well, along with Mark's great analogy here, as long as we have our towel, we'll be fine, right, folks?
Yeah. Don't forget your towel.
Yeah, don't forget your towel. So, I mean, so we've got these hot takes, and we've got our heads are always on a pivot inside of SEO, paying attention to it, and on top of that, just fear of missing out on certain tactics and quick wins. But there are some key principles that are more difficult to discipline yourselves towards as an SEO and part of a team of SEOs, right? Let's pivot around to machine learning for a quick second here, because there's a tie-in to this. If we're actually trusting machine learning to actually do some analysis for us, give us actionable items, we have to have the new discipline of action, but we also have to understand the larger context of where these things are and where we're moving. I mean, we're trying to kind of match our machine to Google's machine, for lack of a better description, right?
Yeah. And, but you can't do that. You're never going to do that exactly, of course. It's always going to be a black box to some extent. So there's two things I think you do try to reverse engineer as much as you can. So, you try to take advantage of that, looking at the SERPs at scale as we do, and doing machine learning analysis to try to extract the things that seem to be commonalities between sites that rank well. That's a foundational, a fundamental thing. But at the more important level, we teach our clients to concentrate on just some bigger issues and just say, am I balancing this all out? We sum it up in what we call URA, which is usability, relevance, and authority. And any high level analogy like that is going to have some fail points at some point. There's going to be some important things that are hard. Is that really usability, or is that And I had some debates with Bill Slosky and other people about that analogy, but I think it works at a large level. So usability is the stuff we were just talking about. It's on the two levels. Is your site accessible to search engines and understandable by them? And then the second level is, of course, by your users. Those two should match up if you're doing it rightly. Right. Is your site accessible to users, and use it, because more and more Google's usability roles and algorithms That's what they're trying to match up with. Like, does this actually work? Is this a good experience for real world users? So that's usability. Then relevance. I mean, it should be obvious all the things that you do from your content optimization, the types of links that you have coming into your site, your internal linking, all of these things to try to help Google match you up the best possible way with the people, the audience that you want, right? And then, of course, authority is good old-fashioned SEO, which is, where it all started with, I think, with, links and things like that. Like, how do you demonstrate to search engines that you're a trusted authority, that, that they should promote, that they should put out there to their searchers. So, I think when you think about it on a high framework level like that, it helps you set your priorities and to say, instead of getting caught up with one particular tactic or one particular issue like that, to set it in that framework and say, like, okay, does this contribute to one of those three, and how important is it?
Right.
And just quickly, we've built a tool that we introduced last year called Actionable Insights that looks at hundreds of different elements and issues, everything from your on-page or technical issues, content, rankings, all kinds of things, and tries to do that for you at a very high level to assess what are those issues that are happening with your site, or even not just issues, but possible opportunities, and assign priority levels to them, and help you sort that out. So you kind of get a roadmap. These are the usability, relevance, and authority issues that are happening for us right now. Here's their priority levels. Of course, we make that customizable because any particular SEO might say, SEO Clarity thinks that's high important. I don't think that's as important.
Oh, that's cool
for them. But it's getting rave reviews from our clients because it's again was aimed at that thing, as I said earlier, about cutting down the time from data to insight to action.
Absolutely.
And this is on the insights level.
And what's interesting about that, if I actually could just segue, I've not seen that tool, but I'm going to dig in there and have a demo of that here real soon. But it's live, it's real time, and you can go back to a week's worth of efforts and be able to see that change right there and there. It's that continued feedback. Now we see, there's a lot of different audit tools that are out there, but it's also setting up not the errors and issues from a technical standpoint. It's setting the balance, as I understand it, of these three areas, and you're seeing a constant feedback as you make these changes, as you make these efforts. And is that unique into its own way? No, but it sounds like you have live data as it's happening, almost to the hour, right?
It's literally to the minute. So when you load actionable insights in that moment, it's going out and making all these assessments.
Wow.
So they are like up to the minute. And then if you use it, we integrate with our own project management and tracking system, which also now is increasingly being integrated with other standard project management tools that SEOs use out there. That you can you see an insight or an issue, you can assign it as a task. And the wonderful thing about if you have that integrated with our task management system, our actual insights watches for that to be fixed, and when it's fixed, it checks it off. You don't even have to remember to go back. Oh yeah, we did that. We we optimized that, checked that off. It's checked off because we can see that you fixed it. So it's it even is optimizing the task management for you.
That's awesome.
Reducing that,
and then you can actually have a report generated on the three different URA principles and be able to see all the different tasks, the audit trail almost as you actually executed these. Yeah.
Yep,
fantastic.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And there is an ROI piece for the C level, is to be able to have that particular discussion, a preset, or preamble of this is what we're going after, and then be able to see these three different factors improve again and again, week after week after week. You got a 24/7 SEO analyst right there giving you the weight of all these different factors, and on top of that, running a report for you. My gosh, we can actually do our job as opposed to analyzing this stuff. But I mean, there's still those SEOs out there that want to do their spreadsheet work, and all of a sudden, after you're freeing them up of those particular factors, my gosh, they actually have to start working for a living. Yeah, I said that.
Most of the real, I'll leave that comment aside. But I think most of the real successful SEOs, the ones that we work with, I know that's what they want to do. They want to be doing the work.
Absolutely.
The analysis can be kind of fun and interesting for a while, but at the end of the day, nobody gets paid for their analysis. Nobody gets paid for their insights. You got to have those things, but nobody above you cares. They care from results. And so our objective is to make our clients successful by cranking out more results per year. At the end of the year, sit down for their review. They have a whole map out of like, this is everything that we accomplished. And we accomplished so much more than we could have before. That's when we feel successful.
There we go. There we go. Well, with that, I want to go ahead and wrap up this first segment. We certainly do appreciate your time and unpacking the machine learning and the scoring tools that SEO Clarity has. We're going to switch over here and talk a little bit more about user intent, as well as the goals towards understanding the Google SERPs and the topography that is in front of us. Mark, we talked a good deal about analysis of data and enterprise SEO and some of the problems and the opportunities that are in front of us to be able to move with scale and move with agility in that space. And we talked about SEO Clarity, the software tool that you provide or that you're a part of that helps enterprise SEOs kind of navigate that. I wanted to pivot around to another subject matter that you've been talking about for a while, and that is user intent, understanding the changes of user intent on search. And we have all been over the years beholden to that rank report, and it has really guided us into some walls over time. The C-level loves to have that trophy word, and it's also kind of a double-edged sword. If you give them, hey, look at where we're ranking right now, and then they look at a report, and then 5 months later, whenever that's dropped, they don't know the context of the SEO topography or the SERP topography. They're all of a sudden they're just seeing that we're fifth now. We were first. What did you do wrong? So there's so much myopic focus on rank and what that means in the SEO industry, let alone the enterprise SEO space. They're pretty much misunderstood. Rank doesn't reflect the topography of SERP. What I mean by that is the actual search engine result page and the real estate that's on that page. You could very well have a position 1, but not be above the fold. And I referenced it before, but we jumped onto your Search Engine Journal podcast that you had, the interview that you had a little while ago, and you're talking about above the fold and below the fold visibility. What are some other metrics that should be more important than just rank as we start looking at SEO, today's SEO, for lack of a better description?
Mm-hmm. Well, aside from actual SERP position and the real estate that you hold in the SERP, which I think we need to be more and more conscious of because Google keeps adding new things in there. It hasn't been the traditional 10 blue links for a long time.
Right.
But aside from that, I think something that has been or should have been important to functioning SEOs going way back before our time, way back before, way back when it was just 10 blue links on the page. And that is traffic. Mm-hmm. Like, are you driving traffic? That should be the number one metric. It's why at SEO Clarity, like, we really urge our clients to integrate their analytics, which you can do with our platform, so that you're bringing those traffic insights into the platform alongside all the other insights that a platform like ours provides, mm-hmm. Including ranking. And the reason why that's even more important than ever, to make that one of your fundamental KPIs, is because any set of keywords that you're tracking for ranking is a human judgment. It's your judgment, and you can, tools like ours can help you make better judgments at that and discover keywords that you should be tracking. But at the end of the day, you've got this finite set of keywords that you're tracking that you think that's what's important to us because right. You determine that's what's important to us. But in reality, Google certainly is not limited to that. And more, we know Google can look at a page, a piece of content, and say, well, we see all kinds of things that should rank for, and all kinds of queries that could be relevant to.
Right.
Then, a lot of those won't be things that you're tracking. So there's always going to be a set of keywords that obviously are important for obvious reasons. They're just dead on what people at the simplest level will be searching for when they look for you. But if you're just concentrating on that, you're missing the larger picture, and you could end up devaluing pages on your site that actually are performing very well for you. So traffic, I could obviously throw in conversion metrics on that as well. That's kind of the next level over, although that begins to merge into areas that are maybe a little outside of SEO per se.
Right.
Our main job as SEOs is to get the traffic in there, get it on the site. Then it's the function of maybe us and a lot of other people to do something with that traffic once it's there. So I think I think visibility, metric, being aware that just even being number one these days doesn't even mean that you're visible, right, that anybody's actually seeing you or easily seeing you, combined with an overall traffic awareness, are much more important than just bald rankings.
Right. There's something else that's happening here in SEO, and I'd love to have your opinion on this. Is you're absolutely right. Traffic is the coin of the realm for performance, right? And then you have everything on the other side of conversion rate optimization, what have you. We'll leave that particular discussion a little bit later here, but understanding the context in which we are presented to the user on the SERP. If we are singularly focused on rank, we're missing a larger picture. There's a conversation happening with the user on the Google. As soon as you're actually interacting with that Google SERP, you're actually seeing what Google believes is the most important things for its user. And it's bringing the people also ask SERP features in. It's bringing the knowledge panel. It's bringing the featured snippets. It's bringing the image carousel. It's bringing the videos. It's bringing all of these different pieces that are one click away answers or continued drilling down on these key concepts. And Google's having that conversation. If we're not paying attention to the real estate of not only that singular key phrase that may be that money term, but the entire cluster, the entire semantic set of concepts around the intent of the user, right? And what Google understands about that. I mean, Google's learning right now. And Jason Bernard basically ascribed Google as being a child, learning and understanding its world around it. And it's bringing it back to the user saying, is this what you meant, right? If we don't understand that those are opportunities for us to be part of that conversation, it's no longer just user traffic. We could very well be positioned in a people also asked link there and not have any inbound, but there's a brand stake that's now visible for us that, yes, we've answered somebody's question. And isn't that a factor of success? That it's not bringing user traffic, but you better believe it's actually qualifying that user to come back to you as a brand whenever they're ready to make that transaction.
Yeah, it's, we talk about the term of search visibility.
Yeah.
Right. And the visibility game, used to be pretty simple because visibility simply meant climbing the ladder.
Right.
If I'm at position 6, I'm not as visible as I'm going to be if I'm at position 3 or certainly position 1. So it was all about that. It was all about moving up. Now it's a much bigger game, and there's a lot more to take into consideration. As you just said, the things like if it's a crowded SERP where there's a lot of these features in that Google's building in. And by the way, I just want to make a point. I always like to make this point to people. Like we always tend to gripe about or complain about Google taking up space on the page with a featured snippet, or people also ask, or carousels, or all kinds of things that push what we call the web organic links further and further down the page. But we're not just competing with that. Even within those blue link organic results themselves,
right?
With the proliferation of structured data and Google being rich results. We have an interesting graphic that we put out, I publish on Twitter from time to time. We put together, because we take a weekly SERP capture of the first page of all of the keywords that we track in our research grid set. Every week. We've been doing that for 5 years. So we have this tremendous history of the actual appearance of the SERPs. So we took just the search term hotels, very simple, high-level head term, hotels, and tracked it went back historically, and we did a time lapse, a 1 minute time lapse. In 1 minute, we show you 5 years of how the first page for hotels has changed.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty amazing to look at. People just are awed by it because it really gives you that graphic representation of how Google's constantly shifting where things are. And you can see, the first web organic result kind of come up above the fold and then go below the fold and go all over the place. The point here is that you need to be, if you have these certain terms that are very important to you, and there's a lot of those search features, or being at number 2 might not be as valuable as it once was because number 1 is getting all kinds of rich results, site links and review stars and everything. All of those are, small, but they add up of pushing
certainly
your result further down the page. Then, it becomes beyond the traditional optimizations. It becomes, is it worth us to invest in some structured data to try to get those rich results?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is it worth us to try to fill out our content more so that we're going to maybe get into a featured snippet, or we're going to get into a people also ask? As you said, whether or not those get clicked on or not, at some point, it's a marketing decision. At some point, SEO is a marketing function. You got to think in terms of the most important thing is getting our brand in front of people.
Right.
And we've got to, accept the reality of the way Google's working and see what we can do about that. And of course, at SEO Clarity, we've built visibility share, we built tools that help you visualize that and see it at scale to know where you're being challenged with those kinds of things. And conversely, where the opportunities that you might want to concentrate on are.
Absolutely. It's very challenging to be able to paint that picture, but I think it's really, really important to understand that success also can't be this linear transaction anymore. And that's really, really important for C-levels to understand whenever they put in, whenever they're looking at success roles and goals, I should say, for SEO, and that they don't see that brass bell being rung with 15% increase in organic. It's not about the breadth of traffic. It's about the best traffic. And if you can actually capitalize on a strategy where Google's actually paying attention to you from a level of authority, we all know that Google's now bringing the citable authorities into news articles as well as any other pieces of information to be anointed in that space and be trusted by Google that you're providing good wealth of content for its users. That is such a factor of measurable success once you're paying attention to that real estate. So you have to have tool sets that you can actually look back and be able to see the evolution of that real estate at a per rank, or at least a cluster of terms that are around a particular topic. Be able to see that Google's actually opening up more featured around not only hotels, but something even more niche. It's learning more and more, and it's putting more of these assets that are direct conversations with users right there. Google, one, their principle is to be able to make money in their ads, obviously, but they're also trying to be as useful to the user as possible. And in some ways, that is a counterproductive point to the websites that are being ranked on Google, because if Google can answer that question without that click having to happen, isn't that what they're in the game for?
Yeah, I mean, you can't, I hate to be an apologist for Google at all, but you can't blame them for that. That's their business model, and it's not altruistic. They understand that user satisfaction means more ad revenue for them, because you're going to come back and you're going to use Google again, or you're going to stay longer on Google. So that's why that's why they're about that. And they're going to go whatever way that their data tells them is most satisfying for the user.
Yep.
So I think another useful skill for the SEO is we can waste a lot of time griping about and complaining about changes that Google makes. Whether it's featured snippets or, whatever thing that we think is taking traffic from us, or, Google putting it its way. But it's far better to deal with the reality and say, okay, where do we pivot?
Yeah.
Analysis to COVID, right? Look at what we all had to do as businesses during the pandemic.
Right.
We didn't ask for it. It wasn't fair. It impacted us in ways that weren't fair. But the businesses that survived and even thrived didn't spend time just collapsing and saying, like, it's not fair that, that this is taking away our business. But they found ways to pivot. They found ways, okay, so where can we expand? Where can we find new avenues of business? Where can we find ways of being useful in the time of a pandemic? So if you want to be taking a very negative analogy, think of Google as a pandemic that you're constantly dealing with. And, you know, if you got to wear your mask or get a vaccine, whatever you got to do. But,
but
concentrate on the action you need to take to get to where you want to go.
Absolutely. I thought we were going to gripe about the inner links into the featured snippets that we were bitching and moaning about earlier this week. I mean, we had a whole clubhouse just talking about how in the world can they put links in the featured snippets.
Well, I guess you probably hopefully you caught that turned out to be a bug, not a feature. So thankfully.
I don't know if it was a bug. I think it was an early release, but hey.
Oh, okay.
It's just a conspiracy theory on my part.
Conspiracy theories. I like it.
But you're absolutely right, is you can miss the forest for the trees, and you've got to be able to understand the full context of how Google's presenting you, how Google's presenting whatever it is to its audience, right? Whatever particular term or key concept, as well as how it's presenting your competitor. If you're not paying attention to all the factors, not just a rank, you're going to be missing the argument entirely. So a competitor could actually be losing rank, but still gaining in authority, and that's a key factor.
I think if I may for just a moment, I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence that we see on that out of our own data is that of the whole set of our clients that we think are, it was the vast majority of them are doing the right things, are prioritizing the right things, are taking the right actions, all the things we've been talking about in the previous segment and this one, they're doing those things. We're seeing, despite all the hand-wringing out there over Google SERP features, over supposed alleged increase in zero clicks, we're seeing these sites consistently, their share of organic traffic is at least holding consistent over the last several years, and in many cases growing. So it doesn't look like, in reality, when you come down to what matters, like is Google stealing traffic from us? Maybe it is, but maybe it's stealing it more and more in areas that didn't matter as much as we thought they did.
Exactly.
And I want to be generous and compassionate here and say, like, there are specific industries or types of businesses, yes, that were very impacted. I mean, if your business model was providing the time of day, or even flight information or hotel information these days, some of the things Google did, they definitely ate your cake, and you need to pivot at a pandemic level. But for most sites, most businesses, they're not seeing, unless they're doing something really bad otherwise, they're not seeing this disaster that some people keep talking about Google stealing traffic. It's just not happening. So I think what's happening is Google's taking away with one hand and giving with the other. They are taking away in some aspects of where, yes, there are more things that where they're answering right on the SERP page or satisfying the user much more quickly than before. So might be less likely to click on your site. But in other ways, they're also, for the sites that are doing the right things, the ability to appear and be relevant for a much broader aspect of queries and users, because of things like going way back to RankBrain, but BERT, the AI technologies that Google is employing, of the ability to understand relevance at a much deeper level than they ever could before, and to match that up in natural language with the way that people actually talk and SERP and search. That's where they're giving. So we see people who are really concentrating on making their sites, of course, very technically adept and accessible, not broken, but also, concentrating on building out the breadth and depth of their content, the thoroughness of it, how well it's interlinked, all of these things that the opportunities to show up at the right time, the right place, and match the user intent, coming back to our topic of this segment, are greater than ever. And, that's where our focus at SEO Clarity has been, on helping people to understand that and match that up. Not just match up like words, like the old days, like user A types in words ABC, we have words ABC on our page, therefore, match, made in heaven, you should rank us. But understanding more and more the intent and audience similarity across a family of keywords or search queries, and being able to incorporate that in your content, your content strategy, gets you tremendously bigger opportunities than you might have had in the past.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that segue. That was the next and last kind of point along this interview, is actually understanding the opportunities of the new SERP features. And then there's this new, there are new semantic strategies that can be capitalized on. It's not only just reconnaissance of what featured, what features are on the SERP, but also now creating a strategy towards, if it actually matches your goals, be able to start feeding those. You have covered in a number of different articles all the different kind of the visible real estate on the organic ranking front, featured snippets, knowledge panels. People also ask site links, top stories, videos, FAQ links, and the like, and all that can be guided and be able to fed into based on a good deal of quality authority from your site to be able to capitalize and position one's website. It's my understanding of what you were just reporting with, I think, Jason Bernard, as well as over at Search Engine Journal. There are 810 SERP features that you guys have been able to count over at SEO Clarity.
Way more than that. We actually have identified over 1,200 now.
Oh, my Lord.
Different SERP features. Now, you see people say, how can that be even possible?
Right.
Understand, when we're talking about a SERP feature, it's any individual thing that Google puts into the SERP that is not the traditional blue link with 2 lines of meta description.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So this can be everything from big visible things like a featured snippet or an image carousel, down to a star rating, or all these little things that are there. The thing is that all of those, so out of those, we identified, like we said, like less than 0.2% of them show up in a majority of the SERPs. So there's definitely that set that we normally see. So there's literally hundreds and hundreds of search results that Google uses, or search features that Google uses in very specific queries and very specific circumstances. But that's an interesting statistic. The more important actual relevant thing is that on any given SERP, on any given day, it can be a very different situation in terms of the way that the page looks. Certainly. And if you're not paying any attention to that, you're missing a huge factor that you should be looking at in terms of how your visibility is to your for your important queries. Absolutely,
but I'll capitalize that and go one more step further. Is as you watch the different SERP pieces, the features, right? It actually is a signal back of how Google's understanding that key concept, right?
Yes.
And it's actually trying to understand and be able to communicate back to the user more and more to a niche, or more and more to an idiosyncratic state, basically. So my question here, or my point here, is that we're learning from the signals that you're talking about right now, how Google's learning about a topic and its related topics. Right? It's almost like this ripple effect. As you see these different pieces come into place, it's getting more and more clarity, no pun intended, of how it's understanding that subject matter. So, long-winded point here, but if you are starting to watch how Google is understanding a topic matter, if we can actually map that, right, then there's a perfect strategy to be able to map content. My question to you is, does that actually serve the user if you're actually mapping the content on your website? Bear with me here. Google's learning, and Google's actually putting more utilitarian sometimes factors into place in front of that user. And if you try to map to what you can start seeing from Google's understanding of the topic, is this a little bit premature for the user? I mean, there's certainly some, one step away relevancy on topic matter and subtopic matter, clusters of content, the hub and spoke model. We understand that methodology. But if you actually start bringing all the different possible nuances of subject matter to a user, is that maybe too much to actually see on your website, but the user is well trained on Google to actually accept those nuances? Do you follow where I'm going there?
I don't know if I do.
All right. Let me back up here. Is that I knew exactly what I was saying when I wrote this question. So the point is, our goal is to try to map how Google's actually understanding topics and subtopics. So there are strategies right there to be able to write content, build relevancy, cross-linking between blogs and structural content to be able to build that authority and get the inbound factors, earning you trust, right?
Sure.
But as we see Google's getting more and more understanding of things that you do not readily see on your website, like a clock or like a calendar of certain type of events that are user-oriented, utilitarian, how do we could go all in trying to build as many features in our website as possible, but it could actually be falling on deaf ears to the user because the user trusts and looks at Google as that utilitarian resource, but on your site, it's looking for more straightforward value. Maybe that's a better way to actually express it. Maybe I'm still not iterating it correctly. Point is that we got to map to the subject matters, and we have to be able to bring this content forefront. I'm just wondering, do we risk the chance of blowing by the user, just like I blew by you, understanding what I was trying to get across, and too much information? Could there be too much subject matter collection for a user to actually understand a particular user session? I'll leave it there.
I think I got it this time.
It took me 3 tries.
I'm sure it was my fault, not yours.
No. Trust me, it was all on me.
So I think the to answer that last part of your question very simply is fundamentally, no, I don't think there can be too much information or too much relevancy on your site, unless a lot of that is really trash, is really garbage.
Right.
Is there, like, you're chasing after, you're trying, somebody said, have these kind of widgets on your site, whatever, like that, and you're doing it for the sake of doing that.
Right.
Then there can be too much. I don't think there can be too much, because anything that helps Google understand better all the scope of relevancy of your site is going to ultimately help the user, because the user isn't going to go through your whole site.
Right.
Like, they're never going to know how much you have on this topic. They don't care about that unless it's useful. Like, unless they, reading through a piece like that, and there's a link to another piece of content or a suggested piece of content that, oh yeah, I want to know about that too. I want to know more about that. That's obvious utility to the end user. What we care about as SEOs at the end of the day is, finding the right audience for that. And all Google for what we want to attract, right? So all Google has to go on is what's on our site.
Right.
And you got to think about it as you're planting clues. You're giving Google every possible reason to say, like, we are the definitive site on topic A. We've got it covered from every angle, and in ways that'll be interesting and useful to the user. Again, SEO Clarity, like, we're building out, one of the things that I'm most excited about this past year is what we've done with our Topic Explorer, our going beyond traditional keyword research to actually topic research, getting down to that level. And we now have a metric that we call intent similarity, which is not just traditional intent like transactional, informational, local, et cetera, but actually reverse engineering billions of search pages, looking at the audience overlaps of various queries. So people who search for my keyword topic that I'm targeting, we can actually measure to the extent of which there is an intent similarity, an end result satisfaction similarity that Google wants to show people for a wide variety of topical phrases, many of which may not have the same words as our keyword phrase.
Certainly. Oh my gosh.
But we can, but that's the kind of thing we're reverse engineering and showing, and it helps you build out more completeness that, if you're doing it right, ultimately is as beneficial to the user, I think, as to the search engine.
That's fantastic.
Hope that touched somewhere in the area of your question.
I think it was on the green, yeah, but I don't even know where I was going before the beginning of the question. I do want to actually bring us back home to one thing that Pedro Diaz actually left us with in our recent show. He says, you know what, it's better to actually own a particular useful piece of information than be indexed, and be able to provide better use for the user than trying to give up all your content as much as possible to just score on the ranking and on the index.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's another factor here of not spilling all your beans on the table and giving all the content away, but actually creating something useful, because ultimately, if you're just banking on different platforms to be creating all the value for you, you inevitably won't have full control over it ever, because there's like choppy waters on a regular basis. But if you actually invest in content that's not really for the SERP, not really for ranking, but it's for the user, then you start even turning into even more of a favored utility as opposed to just trying to capitalize on the subject matter.
And I think the bigger picture of that is that we see, we can debate how successful they are at it at this stage, and how much longer it'll take them to get there. But it's no doubt about it that Google's goal these days is not just to become the answer engine, not to become the Star Trek computer with the answer to everything.
Yep.
I think their real goal, their bigger goal, is to be able to understand what satisfies human beings. That level, and that's a huge challenge for a machine to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's like the biggest challenge there is, but they're working hard at it, and we see them, they're stabbing in, and I think getting more and more successful at it. So what I'm saying is that they're in the past there may have been this gap between what makes the search engine happy and what makes users happy. And as SEOs, we probably, because of where our job lies, we probably tended to concentrate in the past on what made the search engine happy. But now I don't think you need to think that way anymore, because Google is pressing more and more to bring those together.
Yeah.
Where they their goal is for those to match up more and more. So it's not at odds. Like if you're doing what will satisfy the user, then you'll do that. The hard thing is like knowing what that is, right? And this is where I think the value comes back around to analysis of Google and SERPs and what they're doing and what they, over time, how they change, and they show, what they show and result to a given query. These are clues because they're measuring that. They have that data at a scale that none of the rest of us has. They see it. And the only reason that they ever change a SERP, other than experiment, is because they can actually discern the more accurately the intent of that query. And so if you analyze, which is what we're trying to do at huge scale, analyze what they're changing about a search, what rank, not only what ranks, but what shows up on the whole page, and going down to we actually go down to the content level. We go into the content of the first page results.
Oh, wow.
And analyze those pages and what's on those pages. You put all that information together and you begin to get a much clearer picture of, oh, they understand, like, this is what people are really asking for when they type that in. So my job is design a page that is the best possible result for that intent. That's it.
Design that page, and even possibly put your thinking cap on and be able to do some predictive analysis of, okay, they're answering this question, but I'm subject matter expert enough to know they also need this answer as well that's not showing up. And then the game's afoot, because now you're going to feed Google even more particular information because it doesn't have it yet.
Yeah, that's why our clients are raving over this Topic Explorer tool, because it does that work for them. It actually shows them that, it gives them those insights. Then once you see them, like, oh, that makes sense that people that are searching this would also want to know this. But that never came up in my brainstorming. That never came up in my keyword research. But Google sees it, and this tool is helping me to kind of reverse engineer that.
There you go.
And to see these things also matter to that audience. So I should, whether I include them in separate pieces of content that are interlinked with this, or I include them as part of my main content piece. that they should be on my site.
Yeah, keywords are evidence of where we've been, not where we're going, and we've got a heck of a lot more better story if you start mining your own subject matter expertise of your clients and say, you know what, you have these answers and you can put them right there. So fantastic, Mark. I truly appreciate this, and I can't wait to get a gander at the tool there. I do want to actually pivot right around and kind of wrap up here, because I want to be thankful of your time and ask a couple quick questions here. What bugs you about your SEO industry right now? Is that a whole other show?
It might be a whole show. I love this industry. There's not actually a lot that bugs me about it. I think it's one of the things that just comes to mind, and this is like fresh on my mind because I've been thinking about it this week, is how challenging and difficult it is for anybody new coming into the industry or anybody junior in it to know who to trust and who to listen to and who to learn from. I think that's becoming increasingly difficult. Social media has made, we always talk about social media being both a blessing and a curse, right?
Sure.
It's we have access to so many more people, so much more information, but that means also so much more people, so much more information, and not all of those are good. So
you're right. Being
being able to, suss out like, where's the reliable information? Who should I really be listening to? It's I think a more difficult challenge than ever. And I think if there's anything else, it would be, just people who get still too stuck in the tactical level. You can't do that and grow. We started out this show in the first segment talking about scale,
right? And
everything, like, your job number one, I think, as an SEO these days is, how can I scale what I do? How can I not only get the data, but get faster to the insights and get right to the action that I need to do? I think the SEOs that are successful are the ones who are figuring out the ways to do that.
Absolutely. Well, conversely, what excites you about your industry right now?
The very same thing, that we have more access, more insights, more sharing going on than ever in the SEO communities. It's been a little bit side railed by not being able to do in-person conferences and things like that this past year or so, those opportunities, but we're finding other ways to do that. And I think a little bit more, and I know there's people out there who will vehemently disagree with me on this, but I think that we're building slowly but surely better communication between us and Google in particular, and their representatives. I feel like, everybody bemoans, and I'm right there with them, everybody bemoans are losing Matt Cutts to the industry and access to him. But I think the new guard, the new guys that are coming in, are finding finding the way, their place. I think they're sincerely trying to help us in as much as they can. So that's something that's very encouraging to me. I think there's, more, as much as they can, more transparency, more. I think this recent communication we talked about earlier in terms of the page
Core Web Vitals,
page experience update, which is the bigger name of it.
Right.
Them coming out and saying, like, hey, at the end of the day, this is not going to be as big a deal as some of you are making out of it. Like, telling us things like that is really good, and that kind of communication that we need, and helping us to be on the right priorities. So I'm encouraged by that.
Very good. Very good. Well, is there anything that we can promote for you today?
I just love to make people aware of the free stuff that we have.
I love free stuff. Yeah.
Always great. Free stuff. Number one on that list is our literally award-winning, won the US Search Awards last year, schema.dev, which is our schema builder and tester tools. I literally think it's the best thing, the easiest thing to use out there for this point-and-click building structured data on your site, testing it and validating it. Check it out again. That's at schema.dev. That's simple. Absolutely free. And the other thing is just search for SEO Clarity Spark. Anybody we can get to try our free browser plugin. It's our Spark Content Optimizer. Gives you so much incredible free information on any page that you're looking at in the web. Just check it out. Download it. I'd love to hear from you how you like it. But just Google SEO or SEO Clarity Spark. You'll find it.
I think I'll like that already. I love the name. All right. Well, final thought for our SEO and digital marketing audience today, Mark.
Keep your eyes on the big prize. Always think in terms of your priorities. Do everything you can to integrate yourself into the entire marketing scheme of your organization and be hyper useful. Scale, scale, scale.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a great pleasure to talk to you today, and we would welcome you back at any point in time. I can't believe that we've gone on our 10th season and we haven't talked to you, and you got some fantastic information. So you are always welcome back on the show, sir.
Thank you. It was very enjoyable experience, and I'd be glad to come back anytime.
Fantastic. Well, we want our users to actually track Mark down at Mark Traphagen. That's Phagen, and he's also on LinkedIn at Mark Traphagen. And we're certainly you're writing constantly, and you're on numerous different shows regularly. So can't swing a dead cat and not hit Mark, right?
Yeah, I'm covered in dead cat odor. It's terrible. It's hard to get off.
I'm glad he was able to. Good form, sir, because usually it stops people in their tracks. I don't even know where I got that euphemism for. I blame my dad from Texas. I don't know. I don't know.
It sounds Texan, yeah.
It really is. Thanks so much, Mark. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to The Edge of the Web on YouTube. And if you're really feeling up to it today, give us a quick review on this show over at iTunes. It's valuable for our marketing and visibility in the iTunes algorithm. Thanks to our sponsor, Site Strategics. Be sure to check out all the must-see videos over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We'll be talking to you next week. Be sure to check out our news happening each and every Tuesday, all the digital marketing news with the indomitable Morty Oberstein. So from all of us over at Edge, be safe, be well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.